Daniel had spent another cold night sleeping on the streets. The city was busy, filled with people hurrying past him without a second glance. He had learned to keep his head down, to avoid drawing attention because the streets were not kind. His backpack was small and worn, carrying the few things he owned: a change of clothes, a worn-out blanket, and a few personal items that reminded him of a life he had once had. Daniel's face was weathered, not just from the elements but from the years of hard living and constant uncertainty. That morning, Daniel had woken up on a narrow sidewalk, where the sun had barely reached him. He packed up his small belongings and started walking. He didn't have a destination, but he knew he needed food and some place to warm up. Downtown seemed like the best option. The streets were busy, and while most people ignored him, some offered spare change or a small nod. It wasn't much, but it helped him get through the day. Daniel's stomach growled as he walked past the bustling shops. The smell of coffee and baked goods made his mouth water. He had learned long ago that begging for food didn't work as much as asking politely, or finding a place where people might be kind. As he approached a small grocery store, he hesitated. He didn't have money to buy anything, but maybe he could ask someone inside for a cup of coffee or some food that was about to expire. The store was bright and welcoming, a stark contrast to the cold gray streets outside. Taking a deep breath, Daniel stepped inside. The warmth hit him instantly, and for a moment he felt relief. He walked slowly down the aisles, trying not to look out of place. The shelves were filled with colorful packages and fresh produce, something Daniel had missed for a long time. He didn't touch anything, didn't reach for anything. He was just looking, hoping for a friendly face or a kind word. The store manager noticed him immediately. He was a tall man with a stern face, and his eyes narrowed as he looked at Daniel. The manager had seen homeless people come and go, and he assumed Daniel was there to cause trouble. Without asking a single question, he approached Daniel and told him to leave. The words were sharp, almost harsh, and they cut through Daniel's brief moment of comfort like a cold knife. Daniel felt a wave of shame and frustration. He had only wanted a little kindness, and instead he was being pushed away. He didn't argue. He didn't shout. He simply nodded and walked out, holding his head low. The sunlight outside was blinding after the warmth of the store, and he squinted, trying to gather his thoughts. People continued to walk past him, oblivious to his presence. He leaned against the wall, feeling the rough texture of the bricks against his back, and closed his eyes for a moment. He could hear the distant sounds of the city, car horns, footsteps, and the occasional shout. It was all familiar, yet it reminded him of how alone he really was. A few kind faces appeared now and then, someone offering a small smile, a nod, but mostly he was invisible. He had grown used to it, though it never got easier. Each day was a struggle, a fight to survive, and moments like this reminded him of how hard life had become. As Daniel stood there, gathering himself, he noticed a black SUV slowly driving down the street. At first he thought it was just another car, part of the usual traffic. But something about the way it moved caught his attention. It didn't just pass by. It seemed to pause, almost as if it were watching him. Daniel shrugged and turned his gaze away, thinking he was imagining things. After years of hardship, he had learned not to get his hopes up. Still, he couldn't completely ignore it. The SUV stopped near the curb and a man stepped out. He was dressed sharply, with an air of confidence and authority. Daniel instinctively took a step back, unsure if this was someone who might yell at him or if it was safe. The man's presence was commanding, but there was something kind in his eyes that made Daniel pause. For a moment, Daniel felt a flicker of hope, something he hadn't felt in a long time. The man approached slowly, not aggressively. Daniel's mind raced. Could this be someone who was going to accuse him of loitering or call the police? He had experienced enough rejection and fear to know how quickly things could go wrong. But as the man came closer, he spoke gently, asking if Daniel was okay. There was no judgment in his tone, no hint of suspicion, just a simple question. Daniel hesitated. He wasn't used to being asked about his well-being. Most people ignored him, avoided him, or treated him like a problem to be removed. But here was a stranger, someone who actually seemed to care. Slowly, Daniel started to explain. He told the man about his situation, how he had lost his job years ago, how he had ended up on the streets, and how he had just been asked to leave the store. The words came out in a quiet, measured way, not expecting sympathy, just needing to be heard. The man listened patiently without interrupting. He asked a few gentle questions, trying to understand Daniel's life. He wanted to know how long Daniel had been on the streets, whether he had family, and what he had done before this life. Daniel shared bits of his story, careful not to overwhelm the stranger but feeling a strange sense of relief that someone was truly listening. The conversation was brief, but it left an impact. Daniel felt a warmth that went beyond the sun hitting his face. This was not pity, not a quick gesture to make him go away. It was genuine attention, a recognition that Daniel was a person, not just a homeless man to be ignored or removed. For the first time in a long time, Daniel felt seen. The man introduced himself as Colonel Harris. He explained that he was in town for a charity event, but made it a habit to notice people in need whenever he could. He wasn't there to lecture or judge. He wanted to help in a way that made a real difference. Daniel listened in disbelief, trying to process that someone with so much influence had stopped to talk to him. Colonel Harris didn't offer immediate handouts. He wanted to understand Daniel's needs and capabilities. He asked if Daniel had any skills or experience that could help him get back on his feet. Daniel admitted he had worked in construction and maintenance jobs before losing everything. He was honest about his struggles, but also hopeful that he could still contribute if given a chance. The two of them stood there on the sidewalk, talking like friends rather than strangers from different worlds. Daniel could feel a shift inside him, a spark of hope that he had long thought was extinguished. The black SUV, which had seemed intimidating at first, now represented possibility, a bridge between the life he had and the life he could rebuild. As they finished talking, Colonel Harris invited Daniel to join him for a cup of coffee at a nearby diner. Daniel hesitated, unsure if this was really happening, but the kindness in the man's eyes was impossible to ignore. He nodded and followed him, stepping into the unknown but feeling, for the first time in years, that maybe things could get better. Walking together down the busy street, Daniel noticed how small moments of human connection could change everything. He had been invisible for so long, pushed aside and ignored, but now he felt like someone actually cared. The city was still loud and chaotic around them, but for Daniel it felt a little less harsh. There was a sense of possibility in the air, and he clung to it as tightly as he could. That morning, a simple walk down the street and an encounter with a stranger had begun to alter the course of Daniel's life. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time he felt like it might hold something good. He learned that sometimes change comes in unexpected ways, and even a single moment of kindness can start a journey toward hope. The streets were still tough, but Daniel felt stronger, ready to take the first step toward something new, something better, guided by the unexpected attention of a man who saw him not as a problem, but as a person with potential. Daniel followed Colonel Harris to the nearby diner, his heart pounding with a mixture of nervousness and cautious hope. It had been years since anyone had shown him this kind of attention or care, and he found it hard to believe that someone so powerful could actually be interested in helping him. The diner smelled warm and comforting, with the rich aroma of coffee and freshly cooked food filling the air. Daniel felt a sense of relief as he stepped inside and realized he would finally get a chance to sit down and have a meal. Without fear or judgment, Colonel Harris led him to a small booth near the window and gestured for him to sit. Daniel sank into the seat, his eyes taking in the surroundings. People around them were chatting, laughing, or quietly enjoying their meals. For Daniel, this ordinary scene was almost magical. It reminded him of a life he had long ago, a life where he had a home, a job, and a sense of belonging. Now, sitting in the diner, he could feel a small spark of hope returning to him. The colonel smiled and ordered coffee for both of them. He didn't rush Daniel to tell his story, but instead asked gentle questions about his life, showing patience and interest. Daniel found himself opening up, sharing details he had long kept inside. He spoke about losing his job, the struggles with finding shelter, the nights spent on cold sidewalks, and the feelings of isolation and despair that had consumed him over the years. Colonel Harris listened intently, nodding in understanding without interrupting or offering pity. It was the first time in a long while that Daniel had felt truly heard. As Daniel spoke, he realized that sharing his story wasn't just about asking for help. It was about feeling recognized as a human being. For so long, he had been invisible, overlooked, and dismissed. Here was someone who saw him, who acknowledged his struggles and wanted to understand his life. It was overwhelming in a way that made his chest tighten, but also brought a sense of comfort he hadn't felt in years. Colonel Harris then shifted the conversation to Daniel's skills and experience. He asked Daniel what kind of work he had done before he became homeless, and Daniel hesitated at first. He didn't want to seem boastful, but he also wanted the colonel to see that he was capable. Slowly, he spoke about his experience in construction, fixing things and handling maintenance work. He explained how he had always been willing to learn new skills and how he had once taken pride in doing his job well. The colonel listened carefully and then shared that he owned several properties and managed various businesses. He explained that he often hired people who had fallen on hard times, giving them a chance to rebuild their lives. He wasn't just looking to provide temporary help. He wanted to offer a real opportunity, a chance for someone to regain stability and independence. Daniel was stunned. He had never expected such an offer, and the thought that someone of the colonel's influence believed in him was almost too much to process. Daniel's hands trembled slightly as he listened. The idea that he could actually work again, have a place to stay, and slowly rebuild his life felt surreal. He had spent so many years surviving from day to day, without the expectation that anyone would ever offer him a real opportunity. Now here was a man offering him not just help, but a plan, a way forward. Colonel Harris then asked Daniel about his dreams and goals. Daniel hesitated, feeling the weight of his past failures, but with gentle encouragement, he spoke about wanting stability, wanting a home, and wanting to feel like he belonged somewhere. He admitted that he had lost faith in his ability to achieve these things, but the colonel's presence made him feel that maybe it was possible. After their conversation, the colonel suggested they finish their meal while he explained a concrete plan to help Daniel. He arranged temporary housing for Daniel in a safe facility downtown. It wasn't a luxury, but it was a place where he could sleep, eat, and feel secure. He also explained that Daniel would be hired to help with maintenance at one of his properties, where he could learn new skills and earn a steady income. The offer was real and actionable, not just words or promises. Daniel felt a mix of disbelief, gratitude, and cautious optimism. He wanted to believe this opportunity was genuine, but he had been disappointed too many times before. Still, something about Colonel Harris's calm confidence and genuine care made him feel that this time it could be different. He realized that life sometimes offered unexpected chances, and that being open to them could change everything. As they left the diner, Daniel looked around at the city with new eyes. The streets that had once felt hostile and unwelcoming now seemed full of possibility. The sunlight reflected off the buildings, and he noticed small details he had long ignored: the flowers in shop windows, the laughter of children, the simple acts of kindness from strangers. It was as if a door had opened, showing him a world where he could be more than just a homeless man. Colonel Harris guided Daniel to the temporary housing facility, explaining how it worked and what resources were available. He introduced Daniel to the staff, who were friendly and supportive, making sure he felt comfortable and safe. For the first time in years, Daniel had a place where he could rest without fear, where he could feel secure and start rebuilding his life. Over the next few days, Daniel began settling into the routine of the facility. He met others who had faced hardships, people who shared their stories and supported each other. The community was small but strong, and Daniel felt a sense of belonging that he hadn't felt in a long time. He also started his work at Colonel Harris's property, learning new tasks and slowly regaining confidence in his abilities. Each day brought small victories: completing a maintenance task successfully, earning his paycheck, having a warm meal, and a safe place to sleep. Daniel realized that the kindness and opportunity provided by Colonel Harris were not just temporary relief, but a chance to truly rebuild his life. He felt motivated to give his best effort, knowing that this was a real chance to change his circumstances. The experience also gave Daniel a new perspective on life and people. He saw that not everyone ignored the suffering of others, and that compassion could come from unexpected places. He felt inspired to pay it forward, even in small ways, to help others who were struggling. He started thinking about how he could support those who were in the position he had once been in, understanding the importance of hope, guidance, and human connection. Daniel's days were still filled with challenges, but the sense of purpose and opportunity made them easier to face. He began to dream again, not wildly, but with cautious optimism. He thought about having a permanent home, a stable job, and a life where he could contribute and feel valued. He also began to envision helping others who were in need, understanding firsthand the impact that a single act of kindness could have. As he worked and lived in the temporary housing, Daniel reflected on the events that had brought him here. Being kicked out of the store had been humiliating and painful, but it had led to an encounter that changed everything. The black SUV, the calm and caring man inside it, and the genuine attention he received had all been catalysts for a new beginning. Daniel realized that life could turn around in unexpected ways and that sometimes help came when it was least expected, but most needed. Daniel's story was still unfolding. Each day brought new lessons, challenges, and opportunities. He felt a growing sense of gratitude and determination. He knew the road ahead would not be easy, but for the first time in years he had hope. And with that hope, he was ready to take the next steps, rebuild his life, and discover what was possible when someone truly believed in him. After settling into the temporary housing and starting work, Daniel began to adjust to a life that felt almost impossible just weeks before. The routine was simple but meaningful. He woke up each morning knowing he had a place to sleep, a meal to eat, and a job where his work mattered. The comfort of these small but significant things slowly replaced the fear and uncertainty that had dominated his days on the streets. He took pride in accomplishing tasks, whether it was fixing a leaky faucet, painting walls, or tending to the small garden outside one of the properties. Every completed task built a sense of self-worth he hadn't felt in years. Colonel Harris remained a steady presence in Daniel's life. He didn't micromanage but visited often to check on his progress, offering guidance and encouragement. Daniel noticed that the colonel treated him with respect, seeing him as more than just a person in need. He was recognized for his skills and effort, not pitied for his circumstances. This approach was something Daniel had never experienced before, and it made him feel both respected and motivated. One afternoon, as Daniel worked on repairing a broken fence, Colonel Harris approached with a thoughtful look. He suggested that Daniel might benefit from learning new skills that could help him in the long term. He explained that he had contacts in construction, landscaping, and other trades, and offered to help Daniel connect with apprenticeships and training programs. Daniel listened intently, amazed that someone would invest so much in his future. It was an opportunity he hadn't dared to dream about. Over the next few days, Daniel attended basic training sessions and workshops arranged by Colonel Harris. He learned about safety procedures, new tools, and techniques that would improve his work. The colonel encouraged him to ask questions, experiment, and take pride in learning. Daniel felt a renewed sense of purpose. Every new skill was not just knowledge, it was a ticket to a life where he could be independent and respected. Life at the housing facility was also teaching Daniel valuable lessons. He interacted with people from different backgrounds, each with their own story of struggle and survival. The shared experiences created a sense of community. Daniel began forming friendships, small but genuine connections, with people who understood his journey. He realized that being part of a community, even a temporary one, gave him strength and confidence he hadn't felt on the streets. He started helping others, offering advice, encouragement, or simply listening. These small acts of support made him feel like he belonged somewhere. Daniel also began paying attention to the little joys of life that he had long overlooked. The sound of birds in the morning, the warmth of the sun, the smell of fresh bread from the local bakery. These simple things reminded him that life still held beauty, even amid struggles. He started keeping a small journal, writing down his experiences, his goals, and the lessons he learned each day. It became a way to track his progress and stay focused on the future he was building. One day, while working at one of the properties, Daniel noticed that the garden he tended had begun to flourish. The flowers were vibrant, and the small vegetable patch was producing fresh greens. He realized that his effort had tangible results. This simple observation filled him with pride. He had spent so long feeling powerless, and now he could see the direct impact of his work. It was a powerful reminder that with dedication and care, change was possible. The relationships Daniel developed with the staff and residents at the housing facility also played a crucial role in his growth. They celebrated small victories together. A repaired wall, a freshly painted fence, a successful meal at the diner. These moments of recognition and shared happiness boosted Daniel's confidence and made him feel that he was part of something larger than himself. He learned that life wasn't just about surviving, but also about contributing and connecting with others. Colonel Harris encouraged Daniel to set goals beyond immediate survival. He helped him plan for long-term stability, discussing budgeting, saving, and potential career paths. Daniel was initially hesitant, thinking such planning was too ambitious. But the colonel showed him how small, consistent steps could lead to meaningful change. Daniel began setting weekly goals for his work, personal growth, and finances. Each goal achieved reinforced his belief that he could shape his future. As Daniel's skills and confidence grew, he started to think about giving back. He remembered the kindness and attention that had changed his life, the black SUV, the calm and supportive presence of Colonel Harris, the opportunity to work and live safely. He wanted to extend that same compassion to others who were struggling. He began volunteering at the local shelter, offering his time, skills, and encouragement to people in need. Each act of kindness reminded him of how much impact a single person could have on someone else's life. Daniel also reflected on how quickly life could change. The memory of being kicked out of the store and feeling invisible seemed distant but powerful. That moment had felt like the lowest point in his life, yet it had led to an encounter that transformed everything. He realized that sometimes despair could precede hope, and that opportunities often appeared when least expected. He learned to be attentive and open to possibility, understanding that change often required courage and trust. Over time, Daniel began to dream more confidently about his future. He imagined a stable home, a career that utilized his skills, and meaningful relationships. He also thought about the impact he could have on his community. These dreams were no longer abstract ideas. They were goals he could actively pursue. Each day brought new challenges, but he faced them with resilience and determination. The structure, support, and opportunities he had received allowed him to see a future worth working toward. Daniel also started rebuilding relationships with estranged family members. With the support and encouragement of Colonel Harris, he reached out to siblings and cousins he had lost touch with over the years. Reconnecting was not always easy, but it brought a sense of closure and healing. He realized that life could be rebuilt, not just materially but emotionally, and that connections with others were vital for his overall well-being. Throughout this period, Daniel learned the importance of patience, perseverance, and self-belief. He discovered that progress was not always immediate, but that consistent effort could lead to meaningful change. Each repaired fence, each new skill learned, each positive interaction reinforced the idea that he was capable of building a better life. The trust and support provided by Colonel Harris had opened doors, but Daniel knew that his commitment and effort were essential to make the most of this second chance. As weeks turned into months, Daniel noticed a profound shift in himself. He was no longer consumed by fear or despair. He felt empowered, capable, and motivated to continue growing. His confidence in his abilities allowed him to approach challenges with a positive mindset. He was learning not just practical skills, but also resilience, emotional strength, and the value of meaningful relationships. The black SUV that had initially seemed intimidating had become a symbol of opportunity, a reminder that a single encounter could alter the course of a life. Daniel never forgot the moment Colonel Harris had stopped and chosen to see him, not as a homeless man, but as a person with potential. It reminded him that acts of kindness, no matter how small they seemed, could have far-reaching effects. Daniel's story during this time was not just about survival. It was about transformation. The daily routines, small victories, and support from others contributed to a rebuilding of self-esteem and purpose. He realized that life could be reshaped with effort, guidance, and an open mind. He embraced each day as an opportunity to grow, learn, and contribute, understanding that the journey from despair to hope required dedication, courage, and an unwavering belief in the possibility of change. Daniel's life was slowly transforming, but he knew there was still work to be done. He had a place to stay, a job that challenged him, and people who cared about his growth, but he wanted to prove to himself that he could truly build a new life. Every morning he woke up with a sense of purpose, something he hadn't experienced in years. He had begun to understand that hope was not just a feeling, it was something that required action, effort, and patience. His days were full but meaningful. He would start early, tending to tasks at Colonel Harris's properties, learning new skills, and taking pride in completing jobs thoroughly. Painting walls, fixing broken furniture, maintaining gardens. Each small task reminded Daniel of his capability and value. Even the simplest things like tightening screws or patching a leaky pipe made him feel accomplished. He realized that life could be built step by step, and each small success was a building block toward a stable future. The temporary housing facility became more than just a place to sleep. It became a community. Daniel interacted with residents who had experienced hardship in various ways. Some had struggled with addiction, some with unemployment, and others with personal loss. Sharing stories, offering support, and learning from each other created a sense of belonging Daniel had long missed. He found himself forming genuine friendships, people who understood his journey and could relate to the struggles of rebuilding life. Together, they celebrated victories, encouraged each other through setbacks, and created a small support system that mattered immensely. Colonel Harris continued to play a pivotal role in Daniel's life. He would visit regularly, not just to oversee work, but to offer guidance, advice, and encouragement. He helped Daniel see beyond immediate survival and into the possibilities of long-term stability. Discussions about saving money, budgeting, and exploring career opportunities became a part of their routine. Daniel learned that having a mentor who genuinely cared could provide clarity and direction, and he absorbed every lesson with gratitude. One afternoon, Colonel Harris took Daniel to meet a contractor who was looking for assistance for a new project. This was a significant opportunity, one that could provide steady work and a chance to gain experience in a larger, more structured environment. Daniel was nervous but determined. He knew this was a step forward, a chance to show that he could be responsible, reliable, and skilled. With Colonel Harris's encouragement, he introduced himself to the contractor, discussed his experience, and expressed his willingness to learn and contribute. The contractor seemed impressed by Daniel's honesty and determination, agreeing to give him a trial period. Daniel approached each day of this new work with focus and energy. He arrived early, listened carefully, and asked questions when he needed guidance. He was determined to do more than just complete tasks. He wanted to excel. As he worked, he realized that his self-confidence was growing. He could now handle challenges that would have seemed insurmountable weeks before. Every nail hammered, every board measured, and every repair completed strengthened his belief in his abilities. He felt capable, valued, and respected, a feeling he had long forgotten. Meanwhile, life at the housing facility continued to teach Daniel important lessons. He observed how small acts of kindness and cooperation could make a significant difference. Helping a neighbor fix a broken appliance, sharing a meal with someone who was struggling, or simply listening to someone's story became meaningful parts of his day. These interactions reminded him that life was not just about personal success, but also about contributing to the community around him. He began to understand the importance of empathy, patience, and mutual support. Daniel's confidence began to influence other aspects of his life. He reached out to family members he had been estranged from, slowly rebuilding connections that had been lost over the years. Reconnecting was not always easy, but he realized that communication, honesty, and effort could heal old wounds. These renewed relationships brought emotional support and a sense of belonging, reinforcing the idea that life could be rebuilt on multiple levels, not just materially. During this time, Daniel also started to think about giving back beyond the housing facility. He remembered the kindness he had received from Colonel Harris, the single moment that had set the entire transformation in motion. He wanted to extend that same compassion to others who were struggling. He began volunteering at a local shelter, offering his skills, encouragement, and time to help people in need. Each act of service reminded him that the power of human connection could create ripple effects, changing lives in ways he had experienced firsthand. One evening, Daniel reflected on how far he had come. He remembered the humiliation of being kicked out of the store, the fear and loneliness of the streets, and the despair that had weighed heavily on him for years. Those memories were still painful, but they no longer defined him. Instead, they served as a reminder of how much change was possible when someone took the time to notice, listen, and offer help. He realized that life could change quickly, sometimes in the most unexpected ways, and that hope could be reignited even in the darkest moments. The skills Daniel was learning and the experience he was gaining at the contractor's project opened new doors. He was gaining recognition for his reliability, work ethic, and ability to learn quickly. He started receiving small responsibilities that required trust and attention to detail, and he approached each task with diligence. The sense of accomplishment grew with every completed project, and Daniel felt empowered by the progress he was making. The support from Colonel Harris remained consistent. The colonel encouraged Daniel to think about long-term goals, including the possibility of permanent housing, further training, and career advancement. Daniel started to set realistic goals for himself, breaking them into manageable steps. Each step achieved reinforced his belief in his ability to create a stable and fulfilling life. He learned that perseverance, combined with guidance and opportunity, could truly transform a life. Daniel also discovered the importance of self-care. He began paying attention to his health, eating more consistently, exercising when possible, and taking moments to rest and reflect. These small but significant habits contributed to his overall well-being, making him more capable of handling challenges and maintaining focus on his goals. He realized that rebuilding life wasn't just about work and survival, but also about nurturing the mind, body, and spirit. As weeks turned into months, Daniel began to see tangible results of his efforts. His work earned him a steady income, his living situation was secure, and his relationships with family and community members were improving. He felt a sense of independence that had been absent for years. Each success, no matter how small, reinforced the idea that he could shape his future. He had learned that transformation was a process, not an event, and that consistent effort and resilience could overcome years of hardship. Daniel's story during this period became one of inspiration for others at the housing facility and in his community. People noticed his dedication, kindness, and willingness to help others. His actions encouraged others to work toward their goals, seek opportunities, and believe in their potential. Daniel realized that his journey was not just about his personal recovery, but also about inspiring hope and resilience in those around him. Reflecting on the journey so far, Daniel felt deep gratitude for Colonel Harris. The moment the black SUV had stopped, the decision to engage with him and offer support had changed the course of his life. Daniel understood that sometimes it takes one person to believe in someone else to spark a transformation. That single act of attention and compassion had set him on a path toward stability, growth, and purpose. Through these experiences, Daniel also learned about the importance of humility and gratitude. He understood that progress required acknowledging the support of others and being willing to learn and grow. He carried these lessons into his daily interactions, treating colleagues, neighbors, and residents with respect and kindness. This attitude helped him build stronger relationships and create a positive environment around him. Daniel's journey in this phase of his life was about more than survival. It was about growth, connection, and building a foundation for a better future. He had transformed from someone who was invisible and struggling to someone with purpose, skills, and hope. Each day brought new lessons, opportunities, and moments of reflection, reminding him that life could be rebuilt, step by step, with effort, guidance, and the support of those who believed in him.